activity 9-4, we're going to be on server DM1. We're going to install the Active Directory Rights Management Service. So Rights Management Service is a role in Windows Server that allows you to configure who has view, edit, and other access rights to documents. And this is something that can be done outside of the file system. So you can send the file to someone else through an email, and it'll connect back home to the rights management server and say, hey, does this user account have the ability to view, edit, or other changes to the file, or can they print it, or any of that? You can restrict all that kind of stuff through it. It has to be a file type that's supported by the service. This is more common in larger enterprises, especially when they have compliance stuff like HIPAA regulations for healthcare and some other sensitive places out there to have compliance. PCI maybe, but maybe SOX for larger publicly traded corporations, or any places that have a lot of personally identifiable information, also known as PII. So we'll go manage, again on server DM1, add roles and features. I always tick that box. Role-based, doing this server here. And we're going to do Active Directory Rights Management Service. So it's going to add all these extra required tools in. Click next, go through here. Active Directory Rights Management on the screen here. Next. These are the web services that needs. We can leave all those default. And install. Let that run for a few minutes. All right. Roles are installed without any errors. Go to close. Again, we go up here to our notifications in the server manager, perform additional configurations. And now we actually configure Active Directory Rights Management. All right, so we will create a new AD RMS root cluster. There is no others already, so we're creating the first one. We will use the Windows internal database. As I mentioned before, not ideal in the real world. This, I wouldn't even recommend at all for this. It's going to be a little more heavy than the Federation services is. You want to use Microsoft SQL Server, which again adds cost and complexity to uniting another server with Microsoft SQL on there, and got to buy user licenses, and it gets a little expensive, but that's just the reality of this kind of stuff in the enterprise, unfortunately. But for a lab, we can use this one all day long. Okay, so we're going to use, let's see if it even exists here. Our server DOM1, I did not create that user account, so I'm going to need to create that account here. Since it's not in our initial configuration. Okay, that's created, so now we can use it here. We'll look it up here. User 1. Password 01. It's going to check and verify it. So the notes here specifically say that we can use just a domain user. It doesn't have to be a domain administrator, and I would not use a domain administrator. Just a standard domain user account with no permissions. All right, so we're going to use cryptographic mode 2, so it's going to use an RSA 2048-bit key with a SHA-256 hash, which is much more secure. We're going to use the AD RMS centrally managed store key since we don't have a CSP set up. All right, so there's going to be a password for the cluster key. We're going to use password 01, just like everything else in this lab. Again, real world, use a unique password that's longer and stronger. We'll use the default website in this case. Just double checking. So we'll use SSL connection. So we're going to do server DM1. And if you did not reset your machines, you might have some problems in this activity. So please make sure they're reset. All right, we'll just leave the default port of 443 since that is the HTTPS port. All right, we'll create a self-signed certificate. Again, if you didn't reset, you might have problems from Chapter 8 activities with this step. And we're going to change the name on this to MCSA 2016 ADRMS. Doesn't really matter, but that's just what the book wants us to use. We're going to register the SCP, install, and give it a few minutes here. All right, our Active Directory rights management service is installed. Close this. Now if we go up here to Tools, we'll try to open this. We might get an error. Let's see what happens. So that's just because it's a self-signed certificate. So here's the error. So we need to log out first and hopefully it'll work. Log back in. All right, we're logged back in. Let's see what happens when we try to open it now. So, yes. Alrighty, so now we can see that our rights management is set up, and we can move on to the next activity.